Greetings and salutations. My name's That Guy, this is the 2eighthouse, and thank you for listening to Aim for the Top, an Otaku's weekly sports review, where we make the sports world safe for anime fans, one tortuous reference at a time. Glad you could all join me here for episode 2. We got a very big show coming up. We're going to start off by talking some NFL, look at week 17, and then look ahead to the playoffs. Then we'll move on to college football and do a little bowl wrap-up, some coaching news. And then we'll finish by looking at the playoff games that were, and then the championship game to come of Alabama versus Ohio State. After that, we'll move on to some NBA talk. We'll take a look at the standings, maybe do a couple deeper looks at some teams, and check in on how Luka and the Mavs are doing this season so far. After that, it's a quick look around the sports world, and we'll conclude the show by sending another sports star of yesteryear a fond farewell into another dimension. If you enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe. You can do that on podbean.com. You can follow us. You can also use the Podbean app on your mobile device, if that's what you use. I'll also make this episode available on the 2eighthouse YouTube channel. I just got to finish this episode editing it and making it into a video. Then I'll post it there. And soon, I can't say how soon, but soon, this podcast will be available on podcasting platforms like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pandora, stuff like that. It's just a matter of getting it reviewed. Like you have to send in, I guess, an application or whatever to those sites, and they have to, I guess, check to make sure this is a real podcast. And then after they review it and whatnot, then you'll get approval, and then it'll be up on there. So keep y'all informed once that gets approved. But for now, we leave all the introduction aside, and let's get to what we're really all here for, which is sports. We turn first to one of those teams that was still trying to get in the playoffs coming into week 17. That would be the Miami Dolphins. So they won last week in a kind of a miracle game against the Raiders, but because other teams won, the Dolphins needed a win in week 17 to secure their spot in the playoffs. They could lose and still get in the playoffs, provided another team lost, like Cleveland or Indianapolis or Baltimore. But to guarantee themselves, all they had to do was beat a Buffalo Bills team that had secured their spot in the playoffs as a number 2 seed. So they didn't really have anything to play for other than just, having positive momentum going into the playoffs. But things did not go like the Dolphins would have hoped, and they lose big time, 56-23. Fitzpatrick, he was not able to play this game for the Dolphins because COVID protocols. I don't know if he tested positive or if it was just the contact tracing thing where come into contact with someone who had it, but he was not available to play to that game, play in that game. So the Dolphins had to go with Tua Tagovailoa, and it was another bad Tua game, unfortunately, as he threw 3 interceptions. The Dolphins got behind big in the first half, and pretty much at halftime the game was over. He did throw for a lot of yards, I'll give him that. He got that yards per attempt. Yards per attempt was up from last week, but it was mostly garbage time stats, unfortunately, as, again, the game was over by a halftime. So unfortunately for the Dolphins, they would need a little bit of help to get into the playoffs. And the Bills, wow, that was a pretty impressive performance that they put on the whole game, even though second half they were able to rest some guys. I didn't even know Matt Barkley was their backup QB, but apparently he is. And, he came in during the second half. And, all around, the Bills are going into the playoffs with a lot of momentum. Josh Allen playing like a MVP candidate, I would say, even though I don't think he's going to win. I mean, I think it's going to be Patrick Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers, but he's definitely elevated himself this season, anyways, into the MVP discussion. So the Bills, yep, they're locked in at number 2, and the Dolphins, they'd have to wait to see what their playoff fate would be. The Ravens, they were another team that needed a win, and they would get in, and they were playing the Bengals, so that probably wasn't going to be too much of a problem for them, and yeah, they blew it the Bengals 38-3. Lamar Jackson had an efficient game. He didn't play the whole game either. And it was one of those games that was pretty much over at halftime. So not too much to say about that one other than with that one, the Ravens punched their ticket into the playoffs. Their division rivals, the Cleveland Browns, were trying to do the same thing. They took on Pittsburgh, who really didn't have anything to play for other than, again, trying to go into the playoffs with some positive momentum because they were locked into the 3 seed. So they rested some guys. Big Ben did not play. It was up to Mason Rudolph, the Oklahoma State graduate, to try and get some revenge, maybe, I guess, against the Browns for last season. The whole Myles Garrett ripping off his helmet. Did he say a racial slur? That whole thing. It was up to Mason Rudolph against the Cleveland team that in recent weeks has been ravaged because of COVID concerns, and they're still down some guys in that game, but they had to get it done. And hey, lucky for them, they were playing the Pittsburgh Steelers practice squad, kind of. So they were able to get a 24-22 victory. You wouldn't say that Cleveland looked great doing it. Their offense was okay. Their defense wasn't really able to get a whole lot of pressure on Mason Rudolph. They only got 1 sack and 39 pass attempts. But hey, you can't apologize for victories in the NFL. They're all difficult to come by, and that's the victory they needed to get into the playoffs, and they got it. So congratulations, Cleveland Browns. You are back in the playoffs. So moving right along, we'll look at next the Giants taking on the Cowboys in New York. So both teams they still had something to play for. The NFC East division title was still on the line. They would just need the Eagles to beat the Washington football team, and then the winner of the Giants or Cowboys, they would be the one that gets into the playoffs to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This game, man, what a way to end the season. There are a lot of controversial coaching decisions, some dramatic moments, and yes, this game definitely has had everyone up in arms here in the old DFW about how our season went the way it did. But I kind of knew this game after that first drive when Giants just did whatever they wanted, went right down the field, got a touchdown. Going into the game, I was kind of hopeful that, hey, it's the Giants. Their offense really hasn't looked great pretty much the whole season. I think we can get a win against these guys. But after that first drive, I knew that we were going to be in for a dogfight, as they say, and quite the fight that it was, because the Giants just got pressure all day against Andy Dalton. Leonard Williams, he was just, I would say if you want to give the game ball to anyone, you would definitely give it to Leonard Williams. He had 3 sacks and 5 QB hits, and he just constantly was in the face of Andy Dalton, making life difficult for him, and that was a big reason why they were able to get out to such a big lead there in the first half. So they were up 20-6. In the first half, and then they were, of course, able to hang on in the second half. Daniel Jones, he looked okay. He had 230 226 yards passing. He did have 2 touchdowns, but he also had 2 turnovers. He had a pick, although the pick wasn't really his fault. That was more Evan Ingram. The pass just bounced off Evan Ingram's hands right into, I believe it was Donovan Wilson that got that interception. And then Daniel Jones, he also had a fumble. But he was able to move the offense, especially in the first half, because they hadn't, the 5 previous games, the Giants hadn't reached 19 points in those games, and they were able to get 20 in the first half and kind of dictate the pace of the game and forcing Dallas to get away maybe from the offense that they wanted to run, force them to pass a little bit more, be a little more unbalanced, and put their offensive line at risk against that Giants front that was very good. And just kind of, well, look, Dallas is pretty much playing with a backup offensive line this whole season with Tyron and Lyle and then Zach Martin going out. So kind of figured that it was going to be a tough task for them to contain the Giants, and they really weren't able to all game. But hey, I'll give Dallas credit. They were able to come back. They did fight. Definitely didn't quit. So in the second half, there were two decisions that Coach McCarthy made that had people, questioning and going back and saying, "Hey, I think the Cowboys probably should have done this." So the first one was when in the third quarter, I think it was about like 5-6 minutes left in the third quarter, Dallas goes down. Zeke scores a running touchdown. One of the few positive things Zeke did all game. Although, we have to give him credit for even playing in the game because he'd been dealing, I believe, with a hamstring injury. And, he looked like he was playing injured. So I'll give him some credit for trying to go out there and help his team, but he just wasn't effective. But anyways, he got that touchdown, so the score was 20-15. So Dallas they could go for two or they could go for the extra point. They decided to kick the extra point, and a lot of people just thought at that point in the game, being able to go down or be able to get the 2-point conversion so that the score would be 20-17, and then you would only need a field goal, as opposed to being down 4, and then you would still need either 2 field goals or you would need a touchdown in order to be up. So that was one decision that a lot of people were questioning McCarthy's judgment in that situation. Myself, to be honest, I didn't really think it was, that big of a deal. There was still plenty of time in the game that you would still get multiple possessions. You don't want to be chasing points too early. Still a lot of game to go. Still a lot of possessions by both teams to play out. So I was okay with the decision to kick the extra point there and then see how the rest of the game played out before going to 2. I just think going for 2, you should wait till usually the fourth quarter when it's kind of necessary for you to go for the 2-point conversion. Otherwise, I like to let the game play out and just react off of that. So that was the first decision. That was a little bit controversial. The second decision, this one was more of a no-brainer. So it was the Giants. They had I believe it was a 3rd and 16 on the Cowboys' side of the field around the 40. So Daniel Jones completed a pass to Dante Pettis for 10 yards. So that completion put him in field goal range, because if they hadn't gotten that, it would have been like a 60-yard field goal. So it's likely that the Giants would have they probably would have punted and tried to pin Dallas back inside their 20 and let their defense do the work. But they got that completed pass, but on the review, that definitely was not a completed pass. Pettis definitely used the ground to help him catch the ball, but Coach McCarthy elected not to use his challenge, and the Giants went for the field goal, and it was still a long field goal, so about 50 yards, but they made it, and that put him up. So after the game, Coach McCarthy, of course, he was asked about it, and basically he explained that he felt like at that point in the game, hanging on to his timeouts, having as many of them as possible, was more important than challenging that play and potentially losing the challenge. So the call would be upheld, and then the Giants would still be in field goal position, and now you'd be down a timeout. But I would definitely say that was the wrong decision to make, because you're talking about a 3-point swing where that was. So that was the difference between the Cowboys would have only needed a field goal to go up in that game, but with the Giants being able to kick a field goal right there, then the Cowboys would need a touchdown to go up in that game. So that's a very big difference. And especially, I mean, the Cowboys, even if they would have lost a timeout, they still had 2 timeouts, plus they had the 2-minute warning. So that's effectively, they had 3 timeouts. So worrying about 1 timeout definitely should have been outweighed by the fact that this is 3 points that would mean the difference between us needing a field goal and us needing a touchdown to be up top. So pretty sure in that situation, Coach McCarthy, he was covering for whoever the guys were up there in the booth looking at the replay, and yeah, they obviously made a mistake on that by not coordinating with Coach McCarthy that he needed to challenge that play. But yeah, so Giants are able to kick a field goal. Dallas has to go down and get a touchdown. And Andy Dalton, he did on that, at least on that drive, he made some good throws, but they were able to make it into the red zone. But once they got into the red zone, then everything just kind of started to get discombobulated, as on first down, Dalton got sacked by Leonard Williams. On second down, Dalton, he threw a pass to CeeDee Lamb in the middle of the field, and CeeDee looked like he would have been able to get inside the 10 and maybe even to about the 7 if he would have caught that, but he did not. He was looking ahead before he'd secured the ball, and the ball just kind of bounced off his hands, and so that made it third down. And so then on third down, they're third down at about the 15. And on that play, Leonard Williams again is putting a lot of pressure on Andy Dalton, and it looked like maybe Dalton would have had a chance just to throw the ball out of bounds and not get a intentional grounding call. But he did have some pressure in his face, and so I think he panicked right there, and he just kind of threw the ball up there into the middle of the field, just hoping for a miracle that one of his guys would come down with it. But unfortunately, it was an easy interception for the Giants to make. So thus ends that Cowboy drive. But the game at that point was still not over. It was inside 2 minutes, but Dallas still had their timeouts, and if they would have, I think they had 2 at that point. So if they could have gotten a stop somehow, they would have gotten the ball back with somewhere around like 50 seconds to, probably go about 70 yards to go up and win the game, which it's unlikely. The win probability right there is probably fairly low, but it was a chance. But it all depended upon their defense getting a stop. And so they knew the Giants were going to run. The Giants, they knew they were going to run, and it was just going to be a matter of if we were going to be able to stop them. And unfortunately, we were not, as Wayne Gallman ran for a first down on second down. Although a little more drama was to play out, as Gallman inexplicably just lost the ball. He just fumbled the ball. He wasn't getting tackled or anything. He just kind of popped out of his hands onto the ground and went between his legs. But he was able to jump on it and, a dog pile, everyone going after the ball. But Gallman, he was able to get back possession of the ball. So although the Cowboys, they came out with the ball in the scrum, once refs got everyone out of the pile, the Cowboys had it, but they were able to determine with replay that Gallman had actually recovered the ball, and then at that point the Cowboys had gotten it back. But Gallman had already established that he'd recovered the ball. So that play went the Giants' way as well, and that was the game. And so ends another Cowboys season in disappointment. And I think particularly in this one, this was just a terrible year for the Cowboys with all the injuries and with the offensive line and Dak going out and trying to convert their defense from a 4-3 into a more of a hybrid 3-4 kind of look with a new defensive coordinator, Mike Nolan, didn't go so well. So all around, it was just a terrible year for the Cowboys. And, although in the heat of the moment, sure, I wanted the Cowboys to win that game and have a chance at the playoffs, but losing the game isn't such a bad thing because it did, after all, improve our draft position. And boy, do we need a lot of help, particularly on defense. Pretty much on all three levels, in the defensive line, linebackers, and secondary. Anywhere on those three levels, we could definitely use some playmakers. So as much as it hurts to lose to a division rival in Game 17 when potentially a playoff berth is on the line, hey, we end up with the 10th pick, and, well, hopefully Steven, Jerry, and Will McClay will use those high draft picks wisely and improve the Cowboys roster this offseason. So that's enough Cowboys talk to beat you down with. Let's go to another game. Let's go to the Bears and taking on the Green Bay Packers. This was Bears. They could get in the playoffs with a win, or they could get in the playoffs if they lost and then Arizona lost. So they needed a good game from Trubisky to win that game, because the Packers, they were still, I don't believe they had the 1 seed wrapped up, because I think if they lost and then New Orleans and Seattle won, I think there might have been some tiebreaker scenarios where they might have not been the 1 seed. So they did have something still on the line to play for. And Aaron Rodgers, he looked just about perfect, and Mitch Trubisky, he was not perfect. So the Bears lost 35-16. They did make it a little bit interesting there in the second half. They got it within, I think it was 21-16 after they kicked a field goal. But that was as close as they were able to get, as Aaron Rodgers threw another touchdown, and I think Aaron Jones ran for another one. And, yeah, Green Bay seals their place atop the NFC as the number 1 seed. So the Bears, they weren't out of the playoffs. They still just needed to see how that game against Arizona and the Rams would go to determine whether they would be in the playoffs. And that's where we go next. So, yep, Arizona and LA, another divisional matchup in Week 17. Both teams, playoff berth still on the line. LA winning, they're in. Arizona would need help. They would need to win and the Bears to lose. But unfortunately I guess for both teams, because in this game both quarterbacks got out. So it was a backup QB battle for most of the game, as Chris Streveler, I believe his name was, and John Walford for Arizona and LA respectively had to come in for both their QBs, as Jared Goff injured his thumb, I believe, the last game. Had a thumb injury, and he had to have surgery on it, I think. And Kyler was dealing with I think it was either an ankle or like a hamstring or something. Let's just call it a lower extremity injury that he was dealing with. So that happened in the first half, so they had to take him out, and they had to put in Streveler. And LA was able to get up in the game thanks to an interception that they returned for a touchdown, and after that they didn't trail the rest of the game. Kyler did valiantly try to return in the second half and lead a comeback for the Cardinals, but they weren't able to pull it off, and LA ends up winning 18-7. So LA finishes 10-6, and they got their way into the playoffs with that win. And Arizona, unfortunately for them, they fell to 8-8, and they would not be getting into the playoffs. So, I think if you're a Cardinals fan, you can't feel completely dissatisfied with how the season went. I mean, yeah, for a time there, it was looking like the Cardinals were going to have a really kind of a magical season after that. The Hail Mary, they called it, that game against the Bills, where Kyler threw that Hail Mary in the end zone that ended up being a touchdown, and Arizona won the game. But you know what? They were 5-10-1 last season, and this time they were 8-8 in their second season under Coach Cliff Kingsbury's regime. The NFL coach who most looks like he belongs in a Bishonen anime because, I mean, just look at him. He's absurdly handsome. And the female anime fan would definitely have a new object of their affection. But anyways, Cardinals fans, so don't be too upset about this season. You got a little better. Just maybe need to add another weapon into the receiving core to go along with DeAndre Hopkins, because, hey, I'm an A&M guy, and as much as I love Christian Kirk, I'm not sure how much of a number 2 or even a number 3 he can truly develop into. So, Cardinals, you're on the right track. You just need to get a few pieces here and there. So, returning to the AFC, Texans battled Tennessee Titans. Texans were just all about draft order for them, but the Titans, they needed that win to seal the AFC South. This game, the Titans got up big, but hey, Texans, they got Deshaun Watson, and as poor as the rest of the team was around him, especially the defense, Deshaun Watson is still capable of amazing things by himself, and Texans were able to get that game into overtime, but Titans were able to pull it out 41-38 behind, I think, Derrick Henry had, over 200 yards rushing that game. I think he might have had 250, actually, for the game, and he got over 2,000. That's the important thing. He joined the 2,000 club. And I can't even remember the last running back that did that. I think maybe Adrian Peterson. Sometime during his career with the Vikings, I believe he was the last running back to hit over 2,000 yards. So, congratulations to Derrick Henry. He wins the regular season rushing title. He gets over 2,000 yards, and he helps his Tennessee Titans get into the playoffs as the 4 seed. And for the Texans, they got a pretty big offseason coming up this season, although they don't have their first-round pick because they traded that away last season to the Dolphins when they traded for Laramie Tunsil. And they were, some news came out that Deshaun Watson wasn't happy with the fact that he wasn't consulted about the new GM hire that the Texans made, so they got Nick Caserio from the New England Patriots, and yeah, I guess Deshaun Watson wanted to give his input, maybe, on who would be the new GM. So things aren't looking great as the offseason starts for the Texans. But hey, it's a long offseason, and provided they use their draft capital wisely, they don't have their first round pick, but they have their second round pick that they got in the DeAndre Hopkins trade. They don't have their first round pick because that was for the trade last season when they traded for Laramie Tunsil. But anyways, there's still opportunities in the offseason for the Texans to get better. So that'll be a developing story to watch. Now we save the most controversial game for last. That was the Washington football team taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. So the Eagles were already eliminated from playoff contention, but Washington, they still needed a win because if they lost, then the New York Giants would win the division, but if Washington won, they would be the division winner. So it was an important game for them, but not an important game for the Philadelphia Eagles. Although if they would have won that game, they would have moved up to be have the 9th draft pick in the 2021 draft. And I guess that seemed to be their top priority as they, in the fourth quarter, they decided to bench Jalen Hurts, who he was playing okay. He wasn't doing bad. They decided to bench Jalen Hurts to get a look at Nate Sudfeld, the former Indiana Hoosier. And he looked pretty much hopeless out there as the Washington defensive line just made life miserable for him, and he didn't have much a chance to lead the Eagles. And the Eagles end up losing 20-14, and afterwards, of course, everyone wanted to know just what Doug Peterson was thinking when he pulled Jalen Hurts, as you could see from on TV that his players on the sideline seemed varying degrees of confused, frustrated, outraged, maybe even at the fact that Peterson appeared to be trying to lose the game. So after the game, Peterson, he said that he thought it was a good opportunity to get a look at Nate Sudfeld, and that was his reason, that he was not trying to lose the game. He was coaching to win, but it was just about getting Nate Sudfeld some reps. But yeah, I don't think anybody believed that reason. I'm sure he had his marching orders from Jeffrey Lurie and from Howie Roseman that he needed to go ahead and lose that game. And they already had a lot of players that they held out, some with injury and some were just like a healthy scratch. So like Carson Wentz, I know he didn't even dress. He was a healthy scratch. So yeah, they were down a lot of players, and they did appear to be trying to lose. And Coach Peterson just took it one step further when he saw that his team might be able to win this game. He decided, all right, let's try to help my team lose even a bit more. So that was his reasoning behind putting in Nate Sudfeld. And of course, on the broadcast, who was it? I think it was Mike Tirico. Yeah, it was because Al Michaels, I think did he test positive for COVID or something, I think. So yeah, I think it was Tirico and Collinsworth. They definitely agreed with the Philadelphia players that they did not agree in pulling Jalen Hurts at that point in the game. So yeah, that was the big point of contention. Did Peterson do a disservice to the integrity of the game, to his players, to their commitment, to the fact that they're putting their bodies on the line every time they go out there to try to win, and their coach undermines that effort that they put out there by putting in a quarterback who they know pretty much has no chance to help them win that game. So as you can imagine, after the game, a lot of people were talking about this decision. The Giants, particularly, their head coach, Joe Judge, made his displeasure well known at the fact that the Eagles did not give his 6-10 team, a chance to make the playoffs. So at least as far as that goes, I can't say I'm particularly outraged that that the Eagles didn't give a 6-10 team the chance to qualify for the playoffs. Because hey, when you're 6-10, you really shouldn't have a chance to make the playoffs at all. Anyways, you're obviously a team that has plenty of holes in their roster, so a better draft pick for you would not be a bad thing. Although I will agree that as far as the integrity of the game, as for the spirit of competition, you could see Doug Peterson's decision definitely as a betrayal of those values. Not sure where it stacks up in all-time betrayals. Probably still say Griffith's betrayal of the Band of the Hawk was more devastating than what Doug Peterson did, but I will admit I've never seen anything like that in all the years I've been watching football, of a coach in the middle of a game that makes a decision that will intentionally make his team worse in order to try to lose the game to get a better draft pick. So definitely a decision that a lot of coaches probably wouldn't have made. Not sure how that's going to affect his relationship with the players in the future. I'm sure a lot of them, probably lost a bit of respect for what he did there, and it'll be tough for him to, continue to lead the Philadelphia Eagles. But I don't think they have any plans of letting Doug Peterson go, so he's going to be the coach. So I assume the players will have to learn to live with that decision that Doug Peterson made, and as a result, Washington at 7-9 would be your NFC East division champions, led by an injured Alex Smith on the other leg, not the one that he had all those surgeries on. So he didn't look good in this game against a banged up Eagles team who had some injuries, and also again was strategically having some guys not active for that game. But hey, Washington did what they needed to do to get into the playoffs, and so for that, you got to commend the Washington's effort just a little, since how poorly they started off the season when they were playing Dwayne Haskins. So the fact that they actually were able to get to 7-9 once they had to go to Alex Smith, and I mean, he was their third QB, right? Because Kyle Allen was originally the backup, and then he got hurt with an ankle injury, kind of like what happened to Dak. So Alex Smith had to come in and as a third QB, and he did a reasonably good job in those games, and then he got the leg injury, which kept him out a game or two, and then coming back in this game. He didn't look great, but he did enough. So Washington will be in the playoffs. And with that, the NFL 2020 regular season concluded. So now that we've disposed with the regular season, now we had the playoff matchups all set. So they were Indianapolis versus Buffalo, Baltimore versus Tennessee, Cleveland versus Pittsburgh in the AFC. And then in the NFC, the LA Rams taking on Seattle, Tampa Bay versus Washington, and Chicago versus New Orleans. Some interesting matchups, some division rivals playing each other for the third time, so that should be interesting. But we can take a little look at those games. So we can start with Indianapolis taking on Buffalo. So Ethan Douglas at The Athletic, he has some predictions, some playoff predictions that he's got. So he's got his own model that he runs a bunch of times through some simulations to get like percentages that each team win their game. So for this game, he's got the Bills at 67.4%. So in 67% of his simulations, the Bills go on to win that game, and I think that sounds pretty reasonable. I think the Bills' offense is looking pretty unstoppable. Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs got a pretty good connection going on, and Colts defense has shown some weaknesses as of late, particularly against the pass. So, the Colts, they're pretty good. They're 11-5. They got a really good running game. They have a pretty good defense, and Phillip Rivers, he started out kind of slow, and he's also dealt with a toe injury, but he's played well. But I just think the Bills are playing just at another level right now. So I'm going to take the Bills in that game. Give me 31-21. Now for the second game on Saturday, it's going to be the Rams in Seattle. So that's their third divisional meeting. Both their games early in the season were, kind of defensive kind of games, not a ton of scoring. And I figure that's probably what's going to happen in this game as well. So for this one, Douglas's simulations give the Seahawks a 61.6% chance of winning against the Rams. And as good as the Rams' defense is, with Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey, that whole crew, the fact that Goff is either going to be coming off, having surgery on his thumb, or they're going to have to go with John Wolford because, they haven't made the decision yet which QB is going to start. I just don't think I don't think they're going to be able to get it done against Seattle. Seattle, their offense these last few weeks hasn't looked good, but as their offense has looked worse, their defense has looked a lot better. So I expect that to continue in this game against a Rams team that's not going to be at their full operating capacity. So for this game, give me the Seahawks 23-16. So moving to the final game on Saturday, that's going to be Tampa Bay versus Washington. Washington obviously very eager to face Tom Brady, as Chase Young was said after the game on I think on Sunday that he wanted Tom Brady. That whole Ohio State and Michigan rivalry, I guess, that they got going. So Douglas's simulations have the Tampa Bay Buccaneers winning in 68% of his simulations, which, to be honest, I think that's kind of a little low, because as good as Washington's defensive front is, so Montez Sweat, Daron Payne, Jonathan Allen, and Chase Young, the aforementioned Chase Young, as good as they've been and as good as they are going to be into the future, and definitely be a problem for all their division rivals, I just think with their offense and the state that it is, the fact that Alex Smith, he's banged up, he really can't push the ball downfield. They're not able, to use Terry McLaurin as effectively as they were able to earlier in the year. I just don't see a way that Washington is going to be able to score enough points, because Tom Brady and the Patriots, that offense is looking really good right now. They're finally starting to click, I guess you could say. They've had some bumps in the road, certainly, and Mike Evans has been in and out of the on their roster because of some injuries, but he is expected to play in whatever capacity he's able to. But they got Antonio Brown, they got Chris Godwin, they got Rob Gronkowski. They have a lot of weapons. They got Ronald Jones. They got Tom Brady playing well, pushing the ball downfield like Bruce Arians wants him to. It's definitely a different offense than what Tom Brady mostly had when he was with the Patriots, but they're playing really well now. They're on a 4-game win streak. This is not a good team that they're playing, and although it's on the road, as we all probably have seen, playing on the road this season isn't as much of a detriment to your team as it's been in past seasons. So I'm definitely going to take the Buccaneers in a 34-20 victory over the Washington football team. So those are Saturday's games. So Sunday's games begin with Baltimore versus Tennessee. For that game, Douglas's predictions, he has he has the Ravens winning 54.6% of the time. Then obviously Titans 45.4%. I think this is going to be a close game. These two teams, they met earlier in the regular season. The Titans were able to come back in that game and get a win. The Ravens, obviously, they've been playing a lot better. They got a win streak going on. I believe it's 5 games. But most of those games have been against inferior competition. I believe they have a win against the Bengals. In fact, they might have beaten the Bengals twice. In that period, they beat us, my team, the Cowboys. They did have a win against Cleveland. That was a nice win. And they also have a win against Jacksonville. So it's not a lot of quality they've been beating up on, but they definitely have been beating up on them. So I'll give them credit there. And the Titans' offense, obviously they're playing really well right now. Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Corey Davis, finally, picking a very good year. Picking a very good year to have his best season, as I believe this is his 5th season. So after this season, the Titans would have the opportunity to either re-sign him or just let him go. But he's having a very good season. Jonnu Smith, their tight end, he's capable of making big plays, and A.J. Brown, I would say, is their best receiver. So the Tennessee offense is quite potent, but it's their defense that's a big problem, particularly against the pass. They're giving up a lot of plays, a lot of big plays, a lot of points, a lot of touchdowns. But it's going to be a challenge, I think, for the Ravens to take advantage of that, because again, that's not really what the Ravens offense does. I mean, even though they have Hollywood Brown, Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown as they call him, Other than that, they don't really have a lot of downfield threats to challenge a defense. They have a lot of underneath stuff. They got their tight ends. They got Mark Andrews. They have the running backs. They got their stable of running backs with Mark Ingram and KJ Dobbins. And they got Des Bryant. I assume he's going to play in this game as well. But basically in the passing game where Tennessee is weakest, that's not necessarily the Ravens' their specialty. So, I think it's going to be a challenge for them to keep up with Tennessee, because I do think Tennessee is going to be able to score some points. So for this game, I'm actually going to go against what Ethan Douglas's simulations predict, and I'm going to go with the Tennessee Titans to pull out this game. I do think Lamar Jackson's going to have a good game. So his first two playoff appearances, they were not what you would call good performances, good displays of his talent. So I think in this one he's going to be able to perform well. He is going to be able to challenge the Tennessee defense, challenge their secondary a bit, but in the end, I'm going to go with the Titans in this game. So I'm gonna say 31-27. The Titans eke out a victory to move on to the divisional round. Next game up is Chicago and New Orleans. A lot of people are writing Chicago off, which I think is understandable, as their defense definitely has not played as well as everyone expected, especially the second half of the season. And although I would say, the Saints with Drew Brees' health, just how much that rib injury is healed, I think the Saints have enough, because they should be getting Michael Thomas back. So I do think they'll have enough to beat the Bears. Douglas's simulations have the Saints winning 82% of the time. So yeah, it sounds like a good pick to go with the Saints. So for me, I'll go, let's say 35-17. Oh, you know what? Actually, that's pretty much the same as what the Bears lost last week. So how about this? I'll go 31-13. So that Saints defense is really going to keep the screws tight on old Mitch Trubisky and the Chicago Bears. So give me the Saints to win that game to go on to the next round. So that leaves our final playoff game as the Cleveland Browns taking on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Browns again. The Browns again see their roster decimated by COVID. Denzel Ward, their cornerback's out. Joel Bitonio, their tackle, he's out. Their coach will not be able to participate in the game, Kevin Stefanski. So he will be held out due to COVID reasons. He can't even participate at all in the game. He can't have I don't know how we do like a Zoom call or something, but they say they got their backup plan. They've been planning. They've got contingencies for this situation. I imagine Kevin Stefanski a little like Lelouch from Code Geass, always planning ahead, always looking 2 steps ahead of his opponents to anticipate what they're going to do. So Cleveland says they got contingency plans, so we'll see how that plays out for them. It's going to be tough going up against Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh, obviously, they haven't been playing well these past few weeks. Their offense has kind of sputtered. Big Ben having trouble pushing the ball down the field, kind of looking like he has a dead arm a little bit. And Douglas's simulations, he's got the Browns only winning 32% of the time, which, given all the turnover, well, not the turnover, but all the roster holdouts because of COVID, that kind of seems like it's a good choice to go with Pittsburgh, because although I'm sure myself, like a lot of people, aren't high on the way Pittsburgh is playing right now, I do think they'll have enough to beat Cleveland. So I'll say they win 24-20, which would obviously be a little disappointing for Cleveland, just because they had such a good season. They went 11-5. They got first time in the playoffs in almost like 2 decades, or it might be exactly 2 decades, but it's unfortunate that Cleveland can't have their full coach and team for this game to give their best effort in what's their first playoff appearance in 20 seasons. But I guess the NFL, I mean, I suppose you could say they could have pushed back the game to Tuesday, but then that would put Pittsburgh at a disadvantage if they were to win that game. So for their next game, they would only have 4 days of preparation to get ready. So it was kind of a no-win situation for the NFL either way. So it's unfortunate for the Browns, but, they have to feel happy that they did get into the playoffs. They won 11 games. They got Baker Mayfield back on track. And hey, there's a path to victory for them if they can establish a run game with Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt, if they're able to work in some pass. Baker Mayfield, some play action, maybe some bootlegs or, extending broken plays, those kinds of things, off-schedule plays, as they call them. There is a path for them to win. So it's not all lost, Cleveland fans. This certainly is a vulnerable Pittsburgh team. So that was your Week 17 review and your look ahead to the NFL playoffs this weekend. So with that, let us turn to our next topic, which is going to be college football, as there were still some bowl games to be played, the 2 playoff games still to come. So it was a very interesting this past week of college football. So before we talk playoffs, there's a couple topics that we can cover. So the first off, we can look at the conference bowl records. We can give a big thumbs up to the MAC and the Big 12 for going 5-0. Quite impressive. And a big thumbs down to the ACC and Conference USA as they both go 0-6. So big thumbs down. Although to be honest, I think I probably mentioned it last week, I don't really put a ton of weight on how teams perform in the bowl games, just because I'm not really sure the effort level, the motivation that players have at the end of the season, especially now with the college football playoff, rendering the bowl games more and more relevant and more players choosing to opt out of those bowl games anyways, so you're not getting the full team. So while it is nice, I mean, I watch bowl games, some of them anyways, not a lot. I watch when A&M makes a bowl game, but and it is fun when they win, see them do well, but I just don't put much stock into building something for the next season or determining, the true overall quality of a conference. So, nevertheless, there were some games of note. So in the Fiesta Bowl, Iowa State won 34-17 over Oregon. Breece Hall did his Breece Hall kind of thing. He had 136 yards and 2 touchdowns. So this was probably the best season in Iowa State history. They'd only had 2 other seasons where they won 9 games. One, I think it was almost 100 years ago, and the last one was in 2000 when they won 9 games. But in that season, they didn't get to play in the Big 12 championship game. So the Big 12 was actually in 2 divisions back then, and I believe Nebraska was the representative from the North Division in the Big 12. So going to a New Year's Six Bowl and winning that game was definitely very impressive for Matt Campbell and his team there down in Ames. And I believe they should have Brock Purdy back. Breece Hall is returning. So I think Iowa State has a good chance of being able to compete in the Big 12. And although I will say, I'm sure some Iowa State fans wish they could beat Iowa maybe on a more regular basis. But that aside, congratulations to the Iowa State Hawkeyes for a remarkable season in many respects. There were a couple other kind of surprising bowl games. Kentucky won the Gator Bowl 23-21 against NC State, and Ole Miss, they beat Indiana 26-20 in the Outback Bowl. The Outback Bowl is the game that I got to watch. And yeah, speaking of teams who had remarkable seasons, historically remarkable seasons, yeah, I got to think Indiana was kind of disappointed when they got picked to go to the Outback Bowl because had the Big Ten not, changed the rules to let Ohio State in, it would have been Indiana in the Big Ten championship game against Northwestern. And who knows? I would think that Indiana would actually probably be favored in that game, even with missing Michael Penix. So the fact that they didn't get that the Big Ten put in Ohio State and that the playoff committee didn't put Indiana in one of the New Year's Six bowls, it had to be kind of disappointing when your reward, for one of your best seasons ever is to go to the Outback Bowl and play a 4-5 team. And I guess they kind of looked like that for most of the game. They did come alive in the fourth quarter, but Ole Miss was able to hold them off in the end. And congratulations to Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin as he got a contract extension. I think they got put out before the game began, and they get the win and they get to 5-5. So the Lane Kiffin experience in Ole Miss is off to a wondrous start. And in the Peach Bowl, Georgia came back. They were down 21-10 going into the fourth quarter, but they come back. JT Daniels leads his team. He threw for 392 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. But he got Georgia downfield, and then with 3 seconds to go, Jack Podlesny kicks the winning field goal to put Georgia up 24-21 against a Cincinnati team who felt that they should have been in the playoff. They thought that they did enough to deserve merit as the fourth team, but unfortunately for them, they were not selected, and then they were not able to get that win. It would have been a statement win, I suppose. Although again, I don't put that much emphasis on bowl wins, but hey, when you're at a group of five school, if you can get a win against a good Power 5 team, then that would be something to build your resume, and that maybe the playoff committee would look at the next season when they're trying to say how good you are. So Georgia gets the win there. And lastly, we look at the game I was watching intently, Texas A&M versus North Carolina in the Orange Bowl. So North Carolina, they had both their running backs, Javonte Williams and Michael Carter out, their best wide receiver. I think their best, a linebacker or maybe a defensive end. They were missing some players, so we weren't playing the full North Carolina team. And this game, although it ended up 41-27, which makes you think like A&M was able, kind of to control the game. It was pretty much a very close game within one score, just about until the midway through the fourth quarter. So again, A&M, they don't have what I would call the most explosive offense, or the kind of offense where they can put up a lot of points quick, because their offense is being predicated on efficiency in the running game and then using the passing game off of that as their best receiver is, their tight end. So they don't have a lot of deep threats per se, but Kellen Mond, he had he had a good game. He was 16 for 26 for 232 yards. No touchdowns through the air, but he did have a touchdown on the ground. Time of possession, A&M was able to control 32 minutes to 28. They were able to pretty much contain the North Carolina run game, and I think it only had like 90 yards and held North Carolina to like 324 yards total, and they were able to sack Sam Howell 4 times. So although we did throw for over 300 yards and he got 3 touchdowns, it was mostly coming from behind, as after North Carolina scored in the third quarter 27-20 to go up, then A&M scored 3 unanswered touchdowns to put the game away. And what could be, actually is, I believe you already announced it, what is Kellen Mond's last game as a Texas A&M Aggie. He's been the starter there for 4 years, so under Sumlin and now under Jimbo Fisher. I would say it's kind of been an up and down ride with old Kellen. There have been moments where he's looked good. There have been moments where he's looked not so good, and especially last year was just it was just a disappointing performance from him and from the team overall. Although they did have a pretty tough schedule last season. They had to play Georgia, Clemson, Alabama, and LSU, and those teams all finished in the top 10. So it definitely was an easy schedule, but just his performances in those games, they just were not good at all. So it's been a rocky road with Kellen among Aggie fans, but hey, he led us to one of the best seasons that we've had in a very long time, probably since those some of those really good Southwestern Conference teams in the early 90s that A&M had back in the old Southwest Conference. So he got us to 9-1. He got us to a big bowl win in a game against a good opponent. So I won't take that away from him. And from what I've been reading, scouts are saying that he has potential to get drafted in 3rd or 4th round, somewhere in there. He'll be a developmental type quarterback because he does have some traits. He has a good arm. I wouldn't say he has a rocket arm. He has a good arm, although he needs to work on his accuracy. He's good moving his feet. He's good outside the pocket and making something out of nothing when the play breaks down or extending a play. So he does have tools, that a team can work with and maybe try and develop into perhaps a starter, but more likely as a backup. So I suppose overall it's been a good career for Kellen Mond. So we wish him success as he hopefully moves on to the NFL and the Aggies cap a successful, although somewhat disappointing, as they're going to finish, number 5 or whatever. I don't know, maybe now in the final, college football poll that they put out after the championship game is over. Maybe they'll put us above Notre Dame. I don't know. We'll either be 4 or 5. So that's exciting that we finished that well to the season when I'm not sure how great our expectations were going into the season. So it was a pleasant surprise, I will say. But let us turn our attention now to the capital of Texas, lovely Austin, as they have a new head football coach. They fire Tom Herman after 4 years. He went 32-18. He was 4-0 in bowl appearances, which is something, I suppose, to put your hat on, but no Big 12 championships. He did get to the 28 Big 12 championship game, but lost to Oklahoma. So they decided to move on. They decided to pay him out his $25 million remaining on his contract to buy him out, to buy out his assistants for roughly $10 million, and they sign Alabama offensive coordinator Steve Sarkisian to be their new head coach. And I think that news broke, I think it was Saturday, or at least that's when I heard about it. And I think it was during those playoff games. So that was pretty shocking news to have, just as that game against Notre Dame and Alabama was going on, to see that Bama would be losing their coordinator to Texas. So I guess I can't say I'm completely surprised that Texas decided to go that way, because after the regular season, the Texas athletic director, Chris Delconte, he gave a somewhat vague statement on Tom Herman's future. He said something to the effect that, yes, Tom Herman is currently the head football coach of Texas. I suppose he definitely made an effort to use the present tense and not to use the future tense. That he was only currently the head coach, not necessarily in the future. So if you tried to read ahead, that would mean that Tom Herman would be retained, then you would be wrong, as they decided to go a different direction and hire Steve Sarkisian, who Oh, his USC tenure definitely ended in disaster due to some alcohol issues that Sarkisian was having. So it's hard to, I guess, truly evaluate how he did at USC because in his first full season he was 9-4, which is okay. Perhaps not where USC fans want to be, but not a bad season. He did turn around Washington. Not that Washington has historically been a bad program. No, they've had good teams on and off through the years, so they're not one of those historically down kind of programs. But they definitely been in a rut with the coach before, with Ty Willingham. They'd definitely been trending downward, and I believe they went 0-12 in Ty Willingham's last year, so they'd pretty much reached rock bottom. So you do have to give Sarkisian credit for pulling Washington out of the ditch, and at least he got them to mediocrity. I think his best season with Washington was 7-5, so it wasn't great, but he did get them back to somewhat respectability. But as for how he's going to do at Texas, I think it's going to be challenging because he's going against a program that's really rolling right now in Oklahoma. He's got Iowa State that's built itself into a contender, and he's going to face the same pressures, the same kind of pressures that he faced at Texas. He's going to have those at Texas that he faced at USC. So it's going to be a lot of stress on him. So I wouldn't say this is a slam dunk coaching hire. I mean, obviously Sarkisian he's had a couple very good last couple seasons with Alabama, but then again, with the kind of players Alabama is able to recruit, I think a lot of offensive coordinators could have some success there. So it'll be interesting to see how Sarkisian ends up in Texas. Is he going to have a Mac Brown type career? Is he going to be more Charlie Strong or Tom Herman? It remains to be seen. So one last college football topic before we get to the playoffs. Congratulations to Devontae Smith for winning the 2020 Best QB trophy. The 2020 Heisman Trophy. That's right. So he's the first wide receiver since 1991. That was Desmond Howard at Michigan to win the award. He did it with 447 first place votes and 1,866 points overall. So congratulations to him. Can't believe Alabama had 3 Heisman Trophy contenders this season. Him, Mac Jones, and also Najee Harris. So that's pretty impressive for that offense. But it was good to see. It was good to see a non-QB win the Heisman Trophy, because after all, it is best player, most important player. The criteria changes, but I know for certain that it's not the best QB all the time award. So it was nice to see another position, another player position getting a little respect. All right, now we've got that done with all that. So now we can get to the playoffs. So how did they turn out? Did they turn out the way we thought they were going to? As far as Alabama and Notre Dame are concerned, yeah, I think the game pretty much went out how we all thought it was going to. Alabama gets out to a quick lead. They have Notre Dame chasing them the whole game. Najee Harris, Mac Jones, and Devontae Smith just dominate the game. I mean, Najee Harris had 125 yards. Mac Jones was almost perfect. He was 25 of 30. He had 4 touchdowns. Devontae Smith, he had 3 of those touchdowns. They were 6 for 10 on third downs. They had almost 10 yards an attempt per pass attempt, and 5.6 yards on the ground per rush, 437 total yards. So pretty much they did whatever they wanted against the Notre Dame defense. Notre Dame was chasing them the whole game. So they started out with their conservative game plan. So they were trying to establish the run, but it was surprising. Bama defensive performance, because the Bama defense hasn't quite been what it's been in years before. But although they did give up some yards to Notre Dame, but again, some of those were, garbage time yards. Notre Dame had 375 yards, and they were 8 of 16 on first downs. But a lot of those yards did not lead to points, because Notre Dame was down 21-7 at halftime. They did come out. They did get themselves in field goal range, but unfortunately they missed a field goal. And then Alabama comes down and gets a touchdown, and the score is 28-7. And then at that point, the game was effectively over. So Notre Dame, I wouldn't say they acquitted themselves that well in another playoff performance. But I will say they were able to move the ball some against Alabama in the first half, and if they'd been able to take advantage of some of their opportunities, they might have made it a more competitive game. But I think missing that field goal at the beginning of the second half, because that would have given them some momentum and some hope that, okay, we can do this. It's still within striking distance, but the fact that they missed a field goal and then they give up a touchdown, that's a 10-point swing in the game, and at that point it's just going to be too tough to try and come back against Alabama. So Alabama moves on, and they would be facing the winner of Ohio State Clemson now. Definitely didn't go the way I thought that it was going to. So I did expect it to be a close game, but I thought in a high-scoring game as well. But I thought Clemson would be able to get it done with the way that their defense was able to play now that they got guys healthy and not held out due to COVID, and as well as Trevor Lawrence was playing. I did think that Clemson was going to win, but that is not what happened at all. Thanks to a 21-point second quarter by Ohio State. So I would say in a game that was somewhat reminiscent of what Ohio State did to Alabama in that first playoff. Trey Sermon did his best Zeke Elliott impression with 193 yards on 31 carries and a touchdown. Justin Fields was 22-28 for 356 yards and 6 touchdowns. Although he did have one pick, so he did make one mistake, but he was just amazing. Chris Olave, so he was able to return. He had 132 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I think although Ohio State, they did give up a lot of yards, they were able to do a pretty good job against Trevor Lawrence and Clemson, and especially against the Clemson run game. So Travis Etienne was limited to 32 yards. Trevor Lawrence really wasn't able to use his feet that much because he is a pretty good athlete. He's pretty good getting out of the pocket and either keeping plays alive or making a play with his feet. But the Ohio State defense, they had 2 sacks. They had 2 6 passes defense. They caused a fumble and an interception. They also had 5 tackles for loss, so they were really able to disrupt what Clemson wanted to be able to do, and that's what helped them get out to that big lead, 35-14 at halftime, and then the rest of the game they were able to hang on, so they were able to come out with the win. And also, let's see. Another interesting stat of note that Ohio State had 4 receivers that had at least one reception of at least 30 yards. So that kind of tells you that that kind of shows that Ohio State was just carving up the Clemson defense all game. So definitely not one of Brett Venables' best games, and probably not the performance that Trevor Lawrence wanted as he ends his college career. He probably wanted to go out on a little bit of a higher note for him. That he threw for 400 yards, but he had a couple turnovers. And when the game there in the second quarter, when it truly mattered, he wasn't able to keep Clemson in the game. So a little bit disappointing for him, but I wouldn't suspect that that's going to affect his draft stock any, because I really feel like when it comes to evaluating players, you probably shouldn't get distracted just by one game, but you would want to look at the whole body of work before deciding on their quality. So congratulations to Ohio State. They will be facing Alabama come Monday the 11th at either 7 or 8 p.m. I can't remember what it is Central Time, but I will definitely be watching, as I'm sure all of you will be as well. This should be a pretty exciting game because we have two of the best offenses in college football pretty much all season. Although, again, Ohio State has only played 7 games, so they don't have as big of a sample size. But I think it's fair to say for Alabama, they're definitely the best offense in college football, and Ohio State is probably right there with them. So I expect this to be a high-scoring game. Although both defenses, they played well. So Alabama played well against Notre Dame, and Ohio State did play well against Clemson. I think with all the offensive firepower that both teams have, that it's going to be a high-scoring game. Kind of last team with the ball is probably going to win it. And as much as I don't want Alabama to win because I'm sick of Nick Saban winning, I want A&M maybe just to win a SEC division title maybe once every 10 years or something. That would be nice, but I just can't pick against Alabama. They just have too much talent. Their offense is just too good. I think their defense will be able to do just enough to give Trey Sermon and Justin Fields some trouble, and so I think it'll be a very high-scoring game, very exciting for everyone to watch. But in the end, Alabama will be your 2021 national championship. And give me a score of 41-38. And now we can turn our attention away from the gridiron onto the hardwood as we take a look at the NBA. And we can start in the Eastern Conference, just looking at the standings. And these are as of Friday, so oh boy. You know how it is in the NBA. One day is all it takes, and everything changes. It's constantly in motion, so bear with me, folks. But anyways, so in the Eastern Conference, obviously, Detroit, the Wizards, they were expected to be bad. They are very bad. So that's no shock right there. The Chicago Bulls, they're also not doing so great. The Miami Heat and the Toronto Raptors are kind of the interesting stories. Pascal Siakam there in Toronto kind of was getting off to a pretty slow start, but he has picked it up as of late. But yeah, Toronto's struggling, and it's not like their schedule has been that tough so far. I mean, they played the Pelicans, the Knicks, Pelicans again, the Kings. They have played the Celtics and the Suns and the Sixers, but so overall, yeah, starting slow, but it's a long NBA season, although not as long as it usually is. It's 72 games this season, so there is still time for them to get back on track. It's not too late. Let's see. The Atlanta Hawks sitting at 4-4. They got off to a quick start, but they've kind of cooled off as of late. I think Gallinari got hurt, so that's probably affected them some. But yeah, no one expected the Hawks to be in the top of the East this season. Although, again, with all their off-season moves that they made, they were expected to be a little better. So we'll see if they can get that going. The Knicks. Now there you go. The Knicks. They've been a joke in the NBA for almost 20 years. With a few hiccups here and there of some good play. There are a couple of those Carmelo teams that got to the playoffs. I think they got to the second round one year, but yeah, for roughly about 20 years, the Knicks have not been a good overall franchise, but they are starting the season pretty well at 5-4 right now, being led by and scoring Julius Randle. He's like killing it. I think he's like at 23 points, 12 rebounds a game, doing his thing. R.J. Barrett still struggling a bit with his shooting, but yeah, they're getting some contributions from some young guys, and hey, it is early in the season, but you're sitting at 5-4, and that's probably a lot better than a lot of people thought they were going to be. I mean, shoot, they're tied right now with the Milwaukee Bucks, who are also 5-4, so they're still trying to figure things out. The Brooklyn Nets, they too are sitting at they're in the middle of the East, in the muddled middle. They're at 5-5. They've you could say their season's been erratic. just with some injuries and with, hey, is Kyrie going to play today? Is he not feeling like playing today? Is he going to check in with his team, let him know what's up? Maybe not, but they're sitting at 5-5 with Kyrie and Kevin Durant. When they've played together, they've been really well. They've played together really well. But yeah, they're still trying to figure things out with Steve Nash in his first year as the head coach. Or I don't know, maybe you should ask Kyrie, is he the head coach? Are they all, head coaches together? I'm not really sure how that's working out. But you figure with the firepower, if Kyrie and Kevin Durant are able to stay healthy, and, I'm going to assume that they're going to do some load management with both of them coming off of injuries like they were. And also, Kevin Durant's in his early 30s, and Kyrie's, well, he's not quite 30 yet, but he's what, 27, 28, so they're not quite the spring chickens they used to be. So I would imagine, there's going to be some management to how many minutes they're going to play throughout the season, and, keeping them out of, if there's, back-to-back situations, anything like that. But I would expect the Brooklyn Nets to be there in the maybe the 4 or 5 seed in the East, just with the talent of those two guys alone, coupled with some of the other guys that they have, like Joe Harris and Jared Allen, and yeah, I think they probably need to give Jared Allen a little more time and a little less time to DeAndre Jordan. As much as that pains me to say as an Aggie, and DeAndre is definitely a good Aggie. He was just there 1 year, but what a year it was. But anyways, yeah, I would expect that Brooklyn at the end of the season, they're probably going to be, let's just say the 4 or the 5 seed. So they should be a good team going forward. But right now, the team at the top of the East is the Philadelphia 76ers. So they had a big off season. They made some changes to their front office. They finally fired Brett Brown. They finally gave him the axe after many years of speculation that he wasn't quite getting it done, that he wasn't going to be able to be the coach that could lead them to playoff glory. So they give him they send him on his way, and they get Doc Rivers from the Clippers, who, well, I wouldn't say they got him from the Clippers. He got fired by the Clippers, but yeah, so they're looking pretty good. They're as of now 7-2, sitting atop the East, and yeah, I guess the big offseason move that they made was trading for Seth Curry. They traded Josh Richardson to the Mavericks for Seth Curry to improve their outside shooting, because if there's one thing Seth Curry can do, man, is it shoot. Yeah, he's up to 15 points per game right now. He's 56% shooting overall. He's at 54% from 3, and he's shooting an insane 71% effective field goal percentage. Effective field goal percentage just takes into account that a three-pointer is worth more than a two-pointer, and it's also a more difficult shot, so puts more weight to those. But yeah, Seth Curry is definitely working out. He's filling that void that I guess got left once J.J. Redick left in the last offseason to go to the Pelicans. So that's definitely been a good move for them, I would say. And let's see, Tobias Harris, he's also shooting pretty good. He's at 47% from three-pointers. He's at 60% effective field goal percent, and 19 points. And Ben Simmons is doing his thing. He's doing his I like to call it, he's kind of doing his little Jason Kidd impression, where he's almost averaging a triple-double, although it's like a low point triple-double, so that's why I call it the Jason Kidd triple-double, but it's still very impressive what he's doing. And, of course, Embiid is there. He's doing his thing. He's 20-plus points per game, 20 rebounds. You know what you're getting from Embiid. Still shooting the threes, not particularly effective at it, but overall they've been good, and like their unadjusted and adjusted defensive ratings, so those are just ratings that measure how many points that they give up per 100 possessions, and the unadjusted rating doesn't take into account the quality of the offense that they're going up against, and the adjusted one does. But in both of those, they're number one. So that's one thing that's been consistent for the Sixers for a while, since they've been the Embiid and Ben Simmons two-headed monster. They've been a very good defensive team, and that has not changed, which I guess is maybe a little unexpected, because Seth Curry, he's I watched a lot of Mavericks basketball, so I saw him a good bit, and he does what he can, but he's not the greatest defender. But hey, in basketball, it's all about team defense, so they've definitely been able to do that pretty well. And then their overall net rating, which is just their offensive rating minus their defensive rating, and what the difference that is. They were, as of Friday, when I looked at this, they were number 2. So, and that's the adjusted rating. So that does take into account the kind of offenses they were going up against. So it's a very good start to the season for the Philadelphia 76ers. So we'll just have to see if they'll be able to carry that momentum into the season going forward. Now, looking at the Western Conference, the bottom feeders, we got, surprisingly, the Nuggets, who lost a tough one in overtime the other night to the Mavericks, which we can get into in a little. Very good game. But anyways, so it's a bit surprising that the Nuggets are there, given all their talent, but it's not surprising that the Timberwolves, the Grizzlies, the Kings, kind of around there. The Pelicans, they got off to a good start, but they're 4-5 now. And then my Dallas Mavericks, they're also kind of in the muddled middle, just with everyone else. They're at 4-4 there for them. The Phoenix Suns, finally, those, as they call them on the Ringer, the bright future Suns, they're definitely blazing away at 6-3. Los Angeles Clippers at 6-4. The Golden State Warriors have had, it's been quite a week for the Warriors, or I guess I should say Steph Curry, after his performance on the second game of that back-to-back that they had with the Blazers, where he got 62, although they didn't win, and then he had 30 against Sacramento in a win, and then last night he went off for another 38 as they beat the Clippers, I do believe. Yeah, that was against the Clippers. They beat them 115-105, and Curry had 38. So definitely Steph Curry is letting everyone know that, hey, he's still here. He's not going anywhere. And although I still think it's going to be a pretty tough slog for the Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry is definitely showing why he's a former NBA MVP, and that he's not going anywhere, and that they're going to be a factor in the West. I still don't think. I think they're going to be competing for the 6, 7, 8 seed, but hey, where they are now is pretty good, and you figure, as just as with a lot of teams, as they get more time, they'll be able to develop more chemistry, and maybe they'll start getting some better contributions from some of their guys like Andrew Wiggins and Kelly Oubre and those guys. And of course, Draymond's now, actually, he's finally back on the team. He's working into shape, so I suppose overall it's a pretty good start that the Golden State Warriors have had. The Lakers, of course, are on top. They're 7-3. That's pretty much where we expected them to be. I imagine they'll be the 1 seed throughout the entire regular season. I don't see them giving that up. They just got too much talent. I don't know how they're going to do their rotations and whatnot, just keeping their guys healthy. And since they have older players, and players like Anthony Davis, who've had a little bit of injury history, so just keeping them fresh for their playoff run, which they hope will be a deep one. So let's spend a little time focusing in on my own Dallas Mavericks. Got off the week to an inauspicious start, I'd say, with a big loss at Chicago. That was 118-108. Luka didn't play in that game. He had a bruised thigh from their previous game against Miami. I think they were missing some other guys too from COVID, although Chicago was too as well. But yeah, got beat down. Zach Levine, or is it Levine? I swear I've heard it pronounced both ways. So Chicago fans, if you're listening, tell me what it is. But anyways, yeah, he killed us. And Jalen Brunson, though, he had a good game. He had 30 points or something. So good to see him get back because we'll definitely need him going forward into the season and hopefully into the playoffs as kind of one of our guys that we lean on off the bench. So yeah, not a good way to start to start the week for the Mavs, but they get a big win over Houston, who's also kind of struggling at this point. But yeah, it was a big win, 113-100. Luka's line was very impressive. Let's see, yeah, he had 33 points, 16 rebounds, and 11 assists. That was his first triple-double of the year, the first of many to come, I'm sure. Also, Tim Hardaway Jr. Pitched in 30 points, so he was bombing away from a long distance. So yeah, it was a big win for the Mavs. It was looking a little grim for a while, but they were able to pull that one out. So that was a big deal, and it was also the second game of a back-to-back, which, to be honest, I imagine that's why they probably left Luka out there, or why the previous game they didn't play Luka. They just wanted to keep him out, give him a little more time to rest up for a big game against Houston. So they win that one, and then their next game they play I would say it was quite the thriller against the Denver Nuggets. So going into Denver and up there in the Mile High City. Luka, he had another one of his amazing Luka games. He had 38 points. He had 9 rebounds, 13 assists, 4 steals too. Pretty good. They're able to pull out the victory in overtime. So 124-117 over the Denver Nuggets. So that was definitely a big game that Mavericks were able to pull that one out. It was kind of looking, especially in the first half, there were a lot of turnovers, a lot of sloppy play, a lot of bad shooting too, but they were able to turn that around. Dorian Finney-Smith, around here they call him Dodo. I guess that's his nickname. Anyways, he was 4 of 8 on three-pointers and pitched in 14 points. So it was mainly a Luka show with a little help from the other guys, but it was a big win for the Mavs to get that one. So good stuff from our Mavericks. But earlier in the week, I think it was actually after the Houston game, Rick Carlisle, like post-game comments, he was saying how I think he got asked a question about Luka's conditioning, and he mentioned that, Luka, he thought that the season was going to start in January, so that's why maybe he wasn't in the best shape that he could be. It was quite the statement from Rick Carlisle. I'm sure he was just covering for his guy, didn't want to call him out in front of everyone, but Luka, he maybe came in a little overweight, Look, we're not expecting him to look like All Might out there, but we also don't want him to be what I would call the Tetsuo blob from the end of Akira. So if he can find a little middle ground there, that's definitely going to help him, definitely going to help the Mavericks as they go along. But staying with Luka, I read an article, interesting article by Zach Cram at the Ringer, and it was just documenting some of Luka's three-point shooting struggles. And one of the things that he mentioned was that since Luka's coming to the NBA, comparing Luka's three-point shooting to all other players that have both shot at least 100 threes and average at least 6 threes a game. So it's kind of looking at the higher volume three-point shooters. Since Luka's been in the league, Luka is dead last in his three-point shooting percentage. He's at about like 32.5%, and that's like a couple percentage points lower than anyone else in that sample. So that's not exactly a good thing, not where you want to be. But in the article, he talks about why that is, and a big reason is that the three-point shots that Luka is getting they're difficult shots. He doesn't get a lot of because since basically Luka, he is the Mavericks offense. The offense runs through him. He sets other guys up. He's distributing the basketball. He's throwing to guys wide open for 3-pointers in the corner. Those are shots Luka creates for other guys, but no one's creating other shots for Luka. He's not spotting up for a corner three or anything like that, waiting for the ball to get to him. It's a lot of his three-pointers are those step-back threes that James Harden has mastered, but and Luka takes a lot of them, but those shots from the top of the key and around there, those are the most difficult three-point shots. So that's a big reason why Luka's three-point field goal percentage is so much lower than some of the other players. Is that it's from offense that Luka's having to do, and they're just difficult shots. And a lot of times also they're like shots towards the end of the shot clock because, again, Luka, the offense runs through Luka, so it's kind of an end of the shot clock kind of situation where Luka has to, fire up a three. And I also think that hopefully maybe Luka's shooting will get a little better once Kristaps gets back into the offense, and that's going to open things up for Luka because off defenses are going to have to key on KP because he is the unicorn. He can pretty much score from anywhere on the court, so defenses have to respect that, and that might open some opportunities for Luka to get some better looks. I mean, he's still not going to be the kind of offensive player where he's running around coming off screens, doing stuff like that, or setting up in the corner and waiting for the ball to swing to him. But maybe he can get a few easier shots here and there with Kristaps taking some of the scoring pressure off of Luka. So that'll be something to look forward to as the season moves along. Hopefully Luka will not continue to shoot about, last time I checked it was like 9.5% or whatever from three. Hopefully that won't continue as the season progresses. So hopefully we'll see some improvement in that shooting. Mavericks will get a few more wins here and there, and maybe they can get a top 4 seed in the West, which would be they'd be able to host a playoff series for the first time since the 2011 playoffs, so that'd be a big deal. But that is the story so far for the NBA season. So let us set that aside and now continue to our next segment. Char, old buddy, get your Zaku ready. Fire up that Minovsky fusion reactor. Everyone, grab onto whatever you can. I call dibs on the cockpit. It's gonna be a little crowded in there. But make way as we take a lightning fast trip around the sports world for some topics of interest, where we go, how much faster? 3 times faster.
3 times normal speed.
Yes, thank you for that generic Federation flunky. So our first stop is going to be to the world of international soccer. In the French Ligue 1, for those of you who don't speak French, which I don't, although I did take French a long time ago in junior high, so I got that going for me. Anyways, PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, I think is what they say, but I'm just going to say PSG because, again, my French is terrible. So PSG hires Mauricio Pochettino. He was actually a former PSG player, and he was most recently the manager of Tottenham over there in the English Premier League. But now he's comes back across the channel to hopefully lead PSG to what they hope will be another league championship. Currently, they're in second with 39 points, just 1 point behind league leader Lyon. So we'll see what they can do now that they got their new manager. All right, where are we going next? To the world of college basketball, as according to reports on multiple sources, CBS, NBC, ESPN, you can get this anywhere. But so the NCAA men's basketball tournament in March, it's going to be, instead of in 4 regional sites, so that's usually how it's split up. They got 16 teams in each of the 4 regional areas, and then the winner from those regionals go on to the Final Four. But they're all going to be in Indianapolis this year, so it's going to be a bubble kind of situation, kind of like what the NBA did with finishing up the 2020 season, and that is how that's how the NCAA tournament is gonna work. Which that is great news for the tourism industry there in Indianapolis, as all those teams, all that staff, all the refs, whatnot, gonna need places to stay and places to go to eat and whatnot. So hooray for the city of Indianapolis, and hopefully they'll actually be able to have the tournament this year, because it was somewhat of a disappointment not to have a tournament last year, but always fun. I mean, sure, let's be honest, most of us don't pay much attention to college basketball as it goes throughout the season, but once it comes March and March Madness is upon us, we all fill out our brackets and pretend like we have very educated opinions on who's going to win. So hopefully they can get that going, and the tournament will be able to go on this March. All right, one more stop to go. Where's it going to be? Ooh, the world of baseball again. Go to the MLB, and the Boston Red Sox made a bit of history this week as they hired Bianca Smith to be a minor league coach in their system. And she'd be the first black woman to coach in professional baseball. Although I'm not sure where in the minor league system she's actually going to be. I tried to look that up, but I couldn't find anything. It just said the minor league team for the Boston Red Sox. But hey, you know what? With everything going on recently, it's good to have some good news, a good story, a heartwarming story, a story of making history, breaking down barriers, those kind of things. So it's a nice story to end our trip around the sports world with. So let's say our thanks to Char. You can just drop us off now right here. We will see you next week, hopefully. Try not to drop any colonies on the Earth in the meantime. Till we meet again next week, Char. And it looks like we've arrived at the last segment of the show, and as we did before, we will end this show with a fond farewell to a sports figure from times past, as we wish them happy trails to another dimension.
You sure sent that planet to another dimension.
Chao Tzu latched onto Nappa in an attempt to escort him personally to another dimension.
I'm phasing into another dimension.
Somebody must be passing into another dimension.
Soon we will both be in another dimension. And he sent Kui to another dimension.
For I will let you go to another dimension.
I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but he was sent to another dimension.
For this week, we look back on the life of Paul Westphal, longtime NBA player and coach. Started his playing career in college at USC. Although he was born in the LA area, he didn't go to UCLA and play under John Wooden and play on some of those great teams. He wanted to, I guess, carve his own path, maybe, I don't know. But he went to USC. He was drafted by the Boston Celtics in 1972, and he won he was on the 74 championship team for Boston. Throughout his career, he played 12 seasons in the NBA. He averaged 15.6 points, 4.4 assists, and 1.3 steals over 12 seasons. Then he got started on his coaching career right after he retired. He started at some small colleges, worked his way up, became an assistant coach in the NBA, and then in 1992 he was named head coach of the Phoenix Suns. So he was the coach, and he got him to that 93 finals against the Bulls with that pretty good Phoenix team, I'd say, with Kevin Johnson, Dan Marley, Danny Ainge, Charles Barkley, of course. I think Charles Barkley wasn't the MVP that year? I think it was, but they got to the finals against the Bulls, but they lost in 6 games, and that was the pinnacle, I suppose, of Paul Westphal's head coaching career, as he was there at Phoenix for 3 more seasons. Then he moved on, and he was the coach at Seattle for a few seasons. Then he moved on back to the college ranks and went to the Pepperdine Waves there in California, and he was there for 5 seasons. And after that, he made his way back actually into the NBA, and he was the head coach of Sacramento Kings for 2 seasons and about 7 games into the 2011-2012 season. He was fired. And after that time, he was an assistant, most recently with the Brooklyn Nets up until 2016. He passed away at the age of 70 after a brief battle with brain cancer. He leaves behind a wife and 2 children. So we wish him well as he makes his way up into that great basketball court in the sky. And with that, we've reached the end of our show for this week. Thanks for listening. If you want to follow us, you can do so on Podbean for this podcast. You can go to our YouTube channel. Just look for the 28 House. I'll post this episode up there as well. You can subscribe to us. You can follow us on Twitter. Our handle is at @the_28house. It's very important, the underscore, because there's someone else, the 28 House, which is totally unrelated to us, so put that underscore in there. We're on Instagram, and that's just at the 28 House. We're also on Twitch, _28_house. On Facebook, our handle is the real 28 House. Although I think if you just look up our page, just look up the 28 House, you should be able to find our page. And then you can email us at 28, so spelled out, so TWOEIGHT house at gmail.com. So 28 spelled out house at gmail.com, and send us any comments, critiques, suggestions for new segments, or any other ideas that you have, or if you just want to talk about anything. We love interaction with fans, so we look forward to that. That'll do it for this week's episode. Until we meet next week, stay safe out there, and I will let my man Rick Perry send you on your merry way.
Adios, mofo.